Hey sports fans, sorry it's been a couple weeks. This is episode number 5 of the Babbling Bennion. Again, my lesser done podcast. Like I said, it's been a couple weeks. I apologize. The reason I don't do this podcast as much as I do my weekly podcast, Unbiased, which I'll leave a link below for, is because I really only do the Babbling Bennion when I'm like really amped up, when I'm really dedicated and motivated by something, because I'm going to share something on the air that probably doesn't help me in regards to viewership and or reasons to have the show. And that is, I'm a very firm believer that when it comes down to it, the regular season has very little weight in all sports, in my opinion. And I say that because I look at the New York Yankees, right, who were eliminated in the ALCS. They were swept in the regular series. Granted, I get that they weren't the number 1 seed. It was Houston who went on to win the World Series. But who did Houston play? They played Philadelphia, who came in with a wild card spot. And so I find it hard to get motivated and dedicated to talking about regular season sports because, to me, they have very, very little weight. I get that it sets the playoff picture, but unless you are going home that week, I kind of have a hard time getting motivated and talking about sports. So just letting you know, if there's a dry spell, like again, it's been 2 weeks since I did my last video, the Babbling Bennion. It's because I wasn't as motivated. I wasn't as pumped up. I am pretty pumped up right now, and it's because if you check out the link below, again, in my description for my newest episode of Unbiased, I'm going to go for the call out because I am so tired of the sports media playing the if game, which we'll get to in a second because I was talking about this in Unbiased, but it was a biased view, if you will. It was a rather biased view of the Chiefs game on Sunday night, which is what we'll talk about. And then also about Alabama, which we'll talk about as well on this episode. But also, I'm tired of the if game, just in all sports. I'm so tired of the if game, and I think it's ridiculous that we continuously play the if game. So let's go to Sunday night. Kansas City hosts Tennessee. Now, I brought this up on the Babbling Bennion. This is the Babbling Bennion. I brought this up on Unbiased because I was watching Nick Wright on First Things First. And I hope I can say other people's names and other shows' names. I don't know. There's like 8 people that watch this. So anyway, welcome. Anyway, but so I watched Nick Wright on First Things First, and he brought up this immensely important point. Everyone looks at the Buffalo Bills right now, and they say they're a juggernaut. Josh Allen is playing MVP caliber. Their running game is powerful. Their receiving core is great. They have a great tight end, and their defense is the stuff of legends. And this team is just unbeatable. And the Chiefs should be quivering in their shoes. Well, in the last 3 years, Buffalo, like the Tennessee Titans, who the Chiefs beat on Sunday night, has been in the AFC Championship game on the road at Arrowhead, which they lost, which, mind you, the Titans actually led in that game and were a lot closer than the Buffalo Bills, who were absolutely obliterated by Kansas City after blowing a 9-point lead. So the AFC Championship game on the road in Kansas City is similar, Buffalo, Tennessee. Both teams, one to the Ravens and one to the Chiefs, so I guess that's the difference. Both teams, Bills, Titans, lost in the divisional round. Didn't even make the conference championship game. The one difference that benefits Tennessee here is Tennessee last year was the number one seed in the AFC. So I look at that and I say, Tennessee's a great football team. Tennessee has Derrick Henry, who is bullying other professional athletes around on the football field. So I look at that, and like Nick Wright was saying, why are we sitting here saying, oh, look how mighty the Bills are, look how great this team is? Last time I checked, going into Sunday night's game, Tennessee was 5-2. You know, this is a really good football team, a killer defense like they have been for the past couple years, giving Patrick Mahomes some major troubles, and we'll talk about Mahomes boy. But giving him, major defensive credit, and then the whole thing, and I already went off on this on Unbiased, so I'm going to go double off here on the Babbling Bennion, because I can say what I feel. Stop playing the if game and stop telling me and the Chiefs Kingdom and everybody on the planet, if Ryan Tannehill would have played Sunday night, Kansas City would have lost to Tennessee. Tennessee would have won that game. Okay, like I said on Unbiased, do you have a crystal ball that looks into other dimensions where Ryan Tannehill did play? Because if you didn't, you have no proof. You have no reason to tell me that Kansas City's going to lose to Tennessee because of Ryan Tannehill. Where's your evidence? Where's your reasoning? Well, look at last season. The Green Bay Packers were the number 1 seed in the NFC, and right now they are one of the worst football teams on the planet. Well, they lost Devontae Adams. Okay, that's the difference between seasons. Kansas City sent Tyreek Hill away to Miami, and they're a much better football team than they are now. Their defense was ripped to the floorboards, brought in depth from the draft, brought in leadership, players worked their butts off, and what did they do? They won Sunday night's football game. You can't sit here and tell me that Tennessee beats Kansas City because of Ryan Tannehill. You cannot tell me that, because you do not have any feasible evidence or reason. I am so tired of people playing the if game and only playing the one-sided coin. If you play Ryan Tannehill, what's there to say that he doesn't throw 3 pick sixes, fumbles the ball twice, and goes for 19 yards? Well, he's much better than Malik Willis. How do you know that? What's your reasoning? What's your defense? Why do you believe these things? Why are you coming and saying, if this, if that, if this, if that? You want to know what I want to hear? I want to hear your opinion on what happened Sunday night. And I'll tell you what happened Sunday night. Malik Willis was the quarterback. Kansas City won the football game, and Kansas City is now 6-2. That is fact. That is what happened. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about the fact that Kansas City won Sunday night. That is what I get fired up on. Well, if this and if that. What is the feasible reason for getting on? And maybe I should leave names out of this. There's a certain sportscaster that sports host, if you will. And he always alludes to, well, if this happened, or if this player was in, then this would have happened. Again, if you can play that game, I get to say, if Ryan Tannehill played, Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have gone 6 drives without scoring. Well, that's not true, because that defense was amazing, and Ryan Tannehill doesn't play defense. Okay, you're telling me that one player entering the game only affects one side of the ball. Like, for real, help me understand where one player enters the game and everything stays the exact same. When you bring in new variables, you change the formula. You change the equation. Bring in Ryan Tannehill, and I'm still picking Kansas City. Because you sit here and you're telling me, for some unknown reason, Ryan Tannehill, by the way, mind you, Ryan Tannehill hasn't exactly, been the gunslinging quarterback of the NFL. He doesn't exactly lead the NFL in passing yards. But for some unknown reason, because he checks in, because he plays on Sunday night, which he wasn't healthy for, by the way, but anyway, he plays Sunday night, and for some reason, because he plays Sunday night, he goes off for 300 yards and the Chiefs lose to Tennessee. Where is your reasoning and your evidence and your proof? You've got to help me understand why, because he plays, the Chiefs lose. Because last time I checked, players come in and some players absolutely bomb it. May I remind you Sunday, the Buffalo Bills lost to the New York Jets. And a player who called himself out after the game was Josh Allen, who said, when your quarterback plays like explicit and throws 2 interceptions, you're going to lose a lot of games. Now, isn't that interesting? Josh Allen, who many people worship at his feet, threw 2 interceptions and arguably cost his team the game. So why is Ryan Tannehill coming into the game and playing a perfect game and leading Tennessee to a win? You don't know that would happen. The if game needs to be removed from all sports media because it's useless. It's pointless. There is no points or rewards or system for, well, if Ryan Tannehill would have played, Tennessee would have won. So if there's a tiebreaker, we're going to give Tennessee the tiebreaker. You don't get anything out of if. Stop playing the if game because you do not know. Last time I checked in the offseason, if Kansas City traded away Tyreek Hill, their offense was going to bottom out. Did you know that the Chiefs are now 6-2 and one of the most prolific offenses in the league with 3 top 5 defenses that they've played, 2 wins and 1 loss to Buffalo? Why are you insisting that the if game means the product that you seek out? If Ryan Tannehill played Sunday night, Kansas City would have won. That's my if game. So come at me with your if Ryan Tannehill would have played, this would have happened. Because I promise you, if Ryan Tannehill would have played, Kansas City still would have won. Well, what's your argument? How are you backing up what you're saying is the if game? Well, first and foremost, last time I checked, Patrick Mahomes leads the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns, if my math is correct, and going into the Tennessee game, led the NFL in passer rating. So he's on our sideline. Also on our sideline is a receiving core that has completely replaced the great Tyreek Hill. So they're going to see success. Their run game probably opens up the ball. Well, how do you say it probably opens up the ball? Well, you're telling me that Ryan Tannehill comes in and probably leads the Tennessee offense to a win. Where are you getting this information from? Why? Help me understand why Ryan Tannehill comes into the game, replaces Malik Willis, and it is law that Tennessee wins the game. What I'm getting at, I guess maybe I say, and I'm probably just yelling at myself. Ultimately, what I'm getting at is this. Ryan Tannehill or not, I still believe Kansas City would have won on Sunday. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter what I believe. It doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is that on Sunday night, according to the NFL rulebook, the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Tennessee Titans 20-17 in an overtime period. That is all that matters. The if game needs to be removed from all sports media before I go ballistic and lose my mind on people who claim to have a knowledge of sports. If you are referencing the if game in your segments and sports media, in your segments or in your sports talk, I'm calling you out right now and saying that you need an education and you need an opportunity and you need to rethink how you watch sports. I'm calling it out right now. The if game needs to be removed from sports media because it brings nothing to the table. So yes, I'm pretty pumped up about that. That's the if game. The second thing that I wanted to really dive into, that I am beyond exhausted of talking about, is the fact that, again, the regular season really doesn't do much for you. Again, I get that there's the playoff seeding, and I get that. But when the lights are on, when the calendar is low, and it's do or die, win or go home, everything changes. Throw everything out the window. Anybody can beat anybody in the postseason. We've seen it. We've seen wild cards win. We've seen wild cards make the World Series, make the Super Bowl, win the World Series. So it just really bothers me. The other thing that I wanted to really go off on and I brought this up in Unbiased earlier today, is going to Alabama. And why I'm so tired already of, well, I mean, and it really doesn't matter because the playoff is expanding, but this is almost my plea, not plea, it's almost just my rant on why it needs to expand now. Because once again, and this is my biased opinion, and this comes from an Alabama fan, I look at Alabama and I say, yes, they lost to Tennessee, and yes, they just lost to LSU. Both road games, mind you, so I don't see many other teams having to play 2 top 10 SEC road games. But anyway, so they have 2 losses. The team that they just lost to that really put kind of the nail in the hammer of their college football playoff road is the LSU Tigers. And all due respect to the Tigers, I enjoy LSU. I root for them. The Bayou Bengals, I love LSU football. Brian Kelly's got has got LSU going back to where they are supposed to be, and that's national prominence. But I look at LSU, and I look at the coaching, and I look at the players, and I look at the program for right now, and I say, that team, to me, and you can mark this down on November 8th, 2022. By the way, that's today's date. Sorry. I think I said episode 5, but I think I forgot to tell the date. Episode 5 of the Babbling Bennion on November 8th, 2022. You can mark it now and bring it to me if this doesn't go my way. Pretty sure it will. I anticipate Georgia to not only beat LSU, but I anticipate LSU to get stomped. And I look at this and I say, to me personally, and we'll never know, so it's annoying because it's the if game, which we hate to play. But I look at LSU and I believe that they'll get stomped by Georgia. I look at Alabama and I think Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, Nick Saban, championship winningest coach in NCAA history, if my math is correct. And just everything about Alabama, and I say, that team could beat Georgia. I don't know. We'll never know. You'll notice I'm not getting up here and saying, if Alabama played Georgia, because we'll never know, and I don't play the if game. But I believe Alabama would beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and that would catapult them into the college football playoff. But because of the broken system already, Alabama has, again, arguably no shot at the college football playoff. I say arguably, which is something else that I got to pull out my phone. I won't say who it doesn't really matter because I don't even know. It's some guy. It was brought up. Sorry, I'm pulling this up so I can read it word for word. Oh, 1 second, sorry. I wanted to pull it up word for word. This moron said, Saturday will be Alabama's 164th game since the start of the 2011 season. It will be the first time the Tide are playing a regular season game without having a chance to win the national title. Now, the reason I bring this up, and this brings another thing that we need to remove from sports media. Stop saying something stupid in advance, thinking that you're impressive. And I don't mean, well, everyone knows that Alabama's season is over. Because here's the thing. When you sit here and say, this is the first time they'll play in the regular season without a chance to go win the national championship. I didn't know that the college football playoff was confirmed. I didn't know that LSU, who currently leads the SEC West, I didn't know that by default, because Alabama lost, by default, LSU has already won the SEC West. Now, granted, would LSU have to lose their next 2 conference games, in which I would they need to lose their next 2 conference games and Alabama would have to win their next 2 conference games? Yeah. Oh yeah, that has to happen. That literally has to happen for Alabama to get into the SEC championship game should they win their next 2 and LSU lose their next 2. But is that a possibility? It's a possibility. I also didn't know that the teams in front of Alabama in the college football playoff rankings, because I believe Alabama's 10th, the teams 1 through 9, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, I believe it's in this order: Georgia, Ohio State. I already lost it. It's like Michigan, TCU, Oregon, USC, UCLA. I'm pretty sure those teams are sprinkled in there. Tennessee's probably in there. My point is, I didn't know all 9 teams in front of Alabama right now. I didn't know that their season is complete and and the remainder of their season, by forfeit, they've won all their games already. Last time I checked, Georgia was put on upset alert to Missouri. Now, do I think that Georgia's going to win out? Yes, I do. Do I think, these teams, do I think they're going to win out? Yes, I do. But to me, this sports mind is what I'll call them. This sports mind put out there, this is the first time since 2011 that Alabama won't get a chance to play in the national championship. That's not true. Like, that is straight up not true. Because they still have an opportunity. Again, it is incredibly unlikely. With the loss to LSU, though, they did show on Sunday night on the Alabama-LSU game, Alabama has a 16% chance of making college football playoff, which is much greater than a lot of teams. You know what I mean? Again, do not make a mistake. Do I believe Alabama will make the college football playoff? No. Because I believe LSU is going to win their next 2. If they don't win their next 2, their next 2 conference games. If they don't win both, they'll win at least 1. And that'll be that. Because LSU owns the Alabama tiebreaker. But what I'm getting at is, stop saying stupid things, thinking you're smart, when they are not true. Example B, and I am going to try and clump this together. Ranting about my beloved Utah Jazz. Richard Jefferson, I give him credit. He played in the NBA. I didn't. He knows more than I do. That's debatable. And I say that's debatable because this moron is sitting here before last night's game against Utah on Monday morning. He sits here, Jazz are 7-3, they're second in the West, and he's on his show and he goes, Utah really needs to stop winning. I don't know what they're doing here. They need to go all in for Victor Wembanyama, the Australian phenom. And I sat here and I thought, again, not true. Just not true. That's not true. And it's not true for the reason of, number one, you only go into the lottery. You don't automatically win the number 1 overall pick by having the worst record. You increase your chances, for sure, by having, a worse record. But here's my question. Why would you tank for Wembanyama when, last time I checked, players have failed consistently? There have been number 1 overall draft busts. Now, granted, have there been successful number 1 picks? Of course. Some of the greatest number 1 picks of all time, some of the greatest basketball players of all time have been the number 1 pick. But I look at Richard Jefferson's comments. I don't know what they're doing. And I sit here and I wonder, is he purposefully saying something stupid to appear smart? To make other people think, oh, what is he talking about? Why is he talking about that? What does he know that we don't? I'll tell you what he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything. He's an idiot. Richard Jefferson is an idiot. And he's an idiot because he sits here and he says, I don't know why the Jazz are winning. Well, my friend, if the Jazz, without Victor Wembanyama, are a championship team in the near future, I've got it saved in my phone, and I will go to Twitter and I'll tag him and I'll make sure he knows, oh man, thank you so much for telling us that we needed to tank for Victor Wembanyama. That really brought us a championship. Oh wait, no, it didn't actually. I won't go into the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes very much because I have the very unpopular opinion that he's not worth tanking for. I think he'll be a great player. I get he's 7'4", but let me tell you something that I think is interesting, that I think is being discounted. Number one, he plays in Australia. All due respect, it's not the NBA. So he plays in Australia. And I get he's 7'4", and I get he's got range, and I get he's got handles, blah, 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 blah. But we've seen players with height not succeed before. All due respect, Yao Ming is the tallest player in NBA history by what I remember, by if my memory is correct. And if I recall correctly, the Rockets never even made the Western Conference Finals. And that was a Rockets team, mind you, that had Tracy McGrady, Shane Battier, I'm trying to think who else was on that team, because they played the Jazz year after year in the playoffs. But my point is the fact that, kind of going back to the Alabama and the Richard Jefferson, another thing that needs to be removed from sports media is saying something stupid that's just an opinion because you want to seem smart. You want to look right. Especially in the case that if you are right, it's like, okay, like what I think is funny about the Alabama comment is, yeah, it's likely that they're not going to make the championship, but that doesn't make me think that you're smart if Alabama doesn't make the playoff, because statistically it's more likely to happen. With Victor Wembanyama, I sit here and I say, do I think he's going to be a great player? I do. Like, I think he's going to be a solid player. That doesn't make Richard Jefferson right that you should have tanked for him. Unless he turns out to be the next LeBron James and I pause on Giannis Antetokounmpo only because I think Giannis is a great player. Don't get me wrong. But I think one title in all of his time is not enough to look and say, tank for this guy. Again, unless he's a generational talent like LeBron James, which I get people say he is. I'm not sold on that. I'm not on that wagon personally. And so I just think it's important that when we talk sports and when sports media gives their opinions, that it's educated, that it has reason and purpose. Remove the if game and remove saying something stupid, hoping to be right. Because you look like an idiot. And no one stands accountable for what they say. So I'm thinking if there is anything else that was really burning. This week was so interesting to me for just the reason, that I got a sour taste in my mouth of the sports media. Because with Alabama losing, I saw this other thing that said, the dynasty is over. And I get where you're coming from. I really do. But what I think is so important is the fact that Alabama was in the national championship last year. It's kind of like how the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they were in the AFC championship game last year. Like, in today's world, maybe something else that we need to remove is the removal of expecting championships. Because as a Chiefs fan, I'll tell you, it's hard to win the championship. And so I look at that expectation and I look at Alabama and I say, because of the success that they saw before, people are expecting that same success. And that's just unfair. It's especially unfair in the way of how college football is changing. And why I say that is because, and I believe Nick Saban has talked about this, the transfer portal has changed college football. Because instead of transferring and having to wait an entire year to play, you can transfer and play immediately. And so I look at it and I say, to hold Alabama to the standard of winning, I believe, I'm trying to think of what their record in the college football playoff is. Because I believe they've won it 3 times in the college football playoff era. They beat Ohio State in the COVID season, and they beat Clemson once. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I don't have it pulled up because, again, this Babbling Bennion is more, I kind of just throw it out there. I just kind of throw it all together and just kind of start rolling. I'll have to do my, again, I apologize. I'll have to remember because all the years get jumbled up together. But, I just look at Alabama, and they are one of the greatest football programs in NCAA football history. And it's just so interesting. It's what have you done for me lately? And this year they're not even going to make the playoff, which is only the third time in the playoffs history since 2015. So because I believe this will be the 8th or 9th year of the college football playoff. And this will only be the third time Alabama has not at least made the playoff. So, sorry. This will be only the second time because they made it the first year. They just didn't make the championship game. That's what it is. This will be the third year that Alabama has not made the championship game, and only the second year that they will have not made the college football playoff. That's pretty dang good. So, just ranting again, this is my biased opinion of Alabama because I love the Tide. It just didn't go their way, And again, if I'm recycling old news, again, I think it's very interesting that they lost at Tennessee. It's a top 10 SEC road game. And they lost at LSU, which is a top 10 SEC road game. Like, give me a list of teams who are going to win both those. Give me a list of teams who's going to play Alabama's schedule and have a better record. So, that's just my opinion. The last thing I wanted to bring up, and it's interesting, I've thought about it, and I thought maybe I shouldn't bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up. I wanted to bring up the mention of something that bothered me that I saw yesterday, and that was the Pacific University women's volleyball team is scheduled on November 10th to play the BYU women's volleyball team. And Pacific has already forfeited the match and said that they will not work with BYU on their concerns. And it turns out the concern is based on recent reports of racial slurs from crowds at BYU events, especially the women's volleyball games. To that notion, and not trying to get political, but it is political, so I have to. Let me tell you something about BYU's women's volleyball team. And this is fact. This is fact. You cannot argue this. They are currently number 18 in the nation, so they're a very good volleyball team. They're top 25, top 20. Is it just me? Or maybe Pacific decided that they didn't want to travel from California to Provo to get spanked by the number 18 team in the nation and then go home. And yes, I'm going to say this. Pacific, I don't believe that they are worried about the racial slurs for the reason that the incident reported from Duke about racial slurs being aimed at one of their players from a BYU fan was proven to be incorrect, was proven to be made up. It didn't happen. That's proof. That has been confirmed that it did not happen. So how long are teams going to use the fear of racial slurs when it didn't happen? I apologize if I've offended you, and I apologize if I've lost you on subscribing. Again, I don't typically go political, but I believe that transcends politics. And that is almost, to me, that is a black eye on sportsmanship, because you are literally using something that did not happen, that was reported by the media to happen, which didn't. You are using something that did not happen as an excuse to not perform. And I just feel that is, I feel like that is poor sportsmanship. I feel like that is a black eye on the sports world because it never happened. It never happened. So why are you using it as a reference point to not go play a game? Again, this is the first time I've got political on either of my shows, but that is just my biased opinion of how ridiculous it is that teams are using an incident that didn't happen as a reason to not play in a sporting event. But if it didn't happen, how are you using it as your reference? Anyway, that I think has been enough. I've been riled up. This is by far the longest video I've done on Babbling Bennion. Sorry, it's nearing 36 minutes. So I'm going to let you go. Thank you for joining again. I hope you enjoyed my rants. Again, this is my completely biased Babbling Bennion view of these topics. Again, I don't get wound up very often. This has been 2 weeks in the make. Well, not really 2 weeks. It was really only this weekend, but it's been 2 weeks. So I hope to be a little more frequent with these videos. Again, I don't get very passionate all the time just because throughout the course of the regular season, I'm just not as motivated because I just don't think it means as much when it comes to win or go home. So hopefully I'll see you sooner than 2 weeks. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining the Babbling Bennion podcast. I'm your host, Connor Bennion. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.